The house stood quietly, buried deep in a military zone surrounded by dense, primal forest. It wasn't the kind of place children grew up in. It was the kind of place people were stationed. Orders brought them there. Orders took them away. Lena was only 9, but she remembered everything. The silence. The way the trees seemed to press against the house from all sides. How the mist curled around the porch railings like watching fingers. That night, her parents were attending an officers' gathering at the operations hall. It was miles away, behind security gates and checkpoints. The kind of event where no children were allowed. So Lena stayed home, babysitting with her best friend Noah. He was also 9, quiet, curious, always carrying a flashlight even during the day. Their younger brothers, Eli and Ray, both 5, played with blocks and toy soldiers in the hallway. The house smelled like instant noodles, buttered popcorn, and the faint scent of rain-soaked wood. Outside, the forest was still, too still. Inside, they curled up on a floor mattress in front of the flickering TV, watching Shrek. The voices of animated ogres filled the room with warmth and distraction. For a while, they forgot how alone they were. At 9:13 p.m., the power went out. It didn't flicker. It died. The TV screen blinked to black. The ceiling fan groaned to a stop. And for a moment, the only sound was the far-off call of a nightbird. Lena's heart skipped. Her hand instinctively reached for Noah's. He whispered, "Did you see that?" She nodded. "Yeah, maybe a fuse?" But she knew better. No storm. No lightning. No reason. Just darkness. The kind that settles inside a house. Like something entering, unseen. Eli whined quietly. Ray shuffled closer to the blanket. Then the lights came back. All at once. But the house didn't feel right. The room looked tilted. The colors slightly wrong, like they were watching the world through tinted glass. The warmth was gone. Lena walked to the window, drawn by a feeling she couldn't name. Noah followed silently, his flashlight still gripped in his hand. Outside, the woods were painted black and silver by moonlight. The trees stood tall and unmoving. No wind. No insects. Not even the usual chorus of frogs from the nearby stream. Just stillness. And then, a sound broke it. A voice. Calling from the trees. Soft. Raspy. Syrupy sweet. "Lena. Linnea, come outside, sweetheart." Lena's stomach dropped. She blinked and leaned toward the window. There was no one there. Just branches. Leaves. Shadows. But she knew that voice. It was her mother's. Exactly her tone. Her cadence. Except, something was wrong. It was slower. Like someone dragging the sound out of a broken throat. She turned to Noah. "Did you hear that?" He nodded slowly. His voice trembled. "But she said my name." Lena's breath caught. "What?" "She called me." "Your mom's voice," said Noah. New voice, breathier, hoarse. "Noah, come here, baby. I'm waiting." The window was on the second floor. That's what made it worse. No path led to it. No balcony. No one could stand outside it. And yet, that's where the voices came from. The boys had gone quiet. Eli clutched Lena's leg. Ray stared wide-eyed at the window. "She said my name too," Eli murmured. I think she's on the roof." "No," Lena whispered. "She's not. That's not her." Noah's flashlight trembled in his hand. He turned it on and aimed it out the window. The beam cut across the trees. Nothing. Then movement. Not in the trees, but reflected in the glass. A silhouette. Brief. Tall. Unmoving. Lena yanked the curtain shut. They backed away from the window together, retreating to the mattress. The next 2 hours were slow torture. They turned the TV back on and tried to resume the movie. But the screen kept glitching, audio cutting in and out, images jumping like an old VHS tape. Outside, the voices didn't return. But the feeling did, as though something was circling the house. Watching. Waiting. Once, they heard a tap against the glass. Just one. Then silence. Then, a soft creaking, like weight settling on the roof. Lena's ears were ringing. Noah held the flashlight toward the ceiling. Their brothers were too young to understand the depth of the terror, but they still clung to the older kids with quiet, shallow breaths. They didn't sleep. None of them did. At 11:56 p.m., the front door unlocked. Their parents were home. Lena ran to them, eyes wild, voice cracking. She told them everything. The voices. The names. The window. The silhouette. Her mother frowned. "Sweetheart, no one was outside." Her father added, "Probably coyotes." They make strange sounds at night. Noah insisted too, told them about the voice saying his name, about the reflection in the window. But they didn't believe him either. You kids scared yourselves, the adults said. That's all it was. In the days that followed, no one spoke of it again. Not because they forgot, but because they wanted to forget. Life moved on. The families were transferred out of the zone a few months later. New cities, new routines. But the memory followed Lena. And sometimes, in the early hours before dawn, she'd wake up certain that she'd heard her name whispered from outside her bedroom window. She stopped sleeping near windows altogether. Noah eventually moved to another country. The boys grew older. None of them mentioned that night again. 9 years later, Lena saw Noah again. They were both in college. Strangers again, almost. But when they sat down for coffee and started to talk about childhood, the topic shifted. She didn't mean to bring it up. It just slipped out. That night, she said, voice quiet. At my house. The blackout. The voices. Noah looked up slowly. His face turned pale, just like it had at the window years ago. You remember that? Every second. His eyes darted, as if checking for something behind her. Then he nodded. So do I. So does Ray. They fell into a heavy silence. Lena's hands trembled around her coffee cup. I thought it was just me, she whispered. It wasn't, he said. It never was. The strangest part? Even after all those years, Lena never felt like that night had ended. It just paused. Sometimes she'd hear someone calling her name in a crowd. In her mother's voice. Only to turn and find no one there. Other times, she'd be falling asleep and hear a whisper in her ear. So quiet she wasn't sure if it came from inside her mind or somewhere else. And it always said the same thing. In the winter of 1962, on the fringes of a remote farming village in southern Chile, there lived a woman named Rosa Vargas. At 27, Rosa was already the mother of a spirited toddler and pregnant with her second child. Her husband, Ignacio Vargas, was a man nearly 20 years older, a man whose darkness didn't just linger beneath the surface. It spilled out in bruises, broken furniture, and long, drunken silences. Ignacio was feared in the village, not for what he did publicly, but for the way he made you feel even in silence. His presence had a weight, as if he dragged shadows with him wherever he went. His eyes, deep brown, nearly black, were cold and unreadable. When he was angry, Rosa said they didn't look like they belonged to a man. They looked like polished stones sitting in the skull of something ancient and hungry. But the worst thing about Ignacio wasn't the violence. It wasn't even the drinking. It was what happened once a month. Every last Friday, without fail, Ignacio would rise from his seat just before midnight, throw on his hunting jacket, and disappear into the Araucania forest. No matter the weather, no matter the chaos of the week, he'd return by dawn, sweat-drenched, boots muddy, hands trembling. And for those 2 days that followed, something shifted in him. He was kind, gentle, loving, even childlike in his tone. He'd hold Rosa's hand, help with chores, play with their daughter. And then, by Monday, the darkness would return, cold, familiar. It was the only time Rosa remembered the man she'd married. But those weekends of peace grew shorter. And one day, something in her snapped. 2 months before her second child was due, Rosa told Ignacio she wanted a divorce. Her parents supported her. So did the village elders. They knew what kind of man Ignacio was. At least, they thought they did. His answer came not in words, but in steel. He walked 3 paces back, turned, and fired a revolver straight at her head. The bullet missed by mere centimeters, embedding itself in the cedar pillar behind her. For a moment, Ignacio looked, ashamed. Then he dropped the gun, turned, and ran. 3 nights later, the family's well was poisoned. Rat poison. The kind that kills slowly, painfully. He hadn't just tried to murder Rosa. He'd put his own child at risk. No one ever saw him again. Or so they believed. Then came the next Friday. Rosa had almost drifted off when the front door slammed open with such force the hinges groaned. She jolted upright in bed, hand on her swollen belly. But instead of fury, Ignacio's face was pale with panic. He glanced at the clock, 11:55 p.m. 5 minutes late. His hand shook as he pulled on his old hunting boots, but in his rush, he forgot one thing. the double-barrel shotgun tucked under the bed, the one he never left without. Rosa watched him vanish into the trees. She didn't know what to feel, fear, hatred, or relief. And then she laughed. The man who tried to poison her was now unarmed in the forest. She kissed her daughter's head, curled beneath the wool blanket, and let the moonlight lull her towards sleep. 12:30 a.m. A howl echoed across the farmland. Soft, distant. The neighbor's dogs, she whispered, brushing it away like a passing breeze. 12:45 a.m. Another one. Louder. Closer. She sat up, heartbeat quickening. Then came the third. 12:55 a.m. It wasn't a howl anymore. It was a scream, low and drawn out. The kind of sound that shook the ground beneath your feet, that crawled down your spine and stayed there. Then something slammed against the back door. Rosa didn't hesitate. She rolled from bed, reached beneath the floorboard, and pulled out Ignacio's forgotten shotgun. Her daughter stirred. She conned her with a soft hum in one trembling hand. "Nothing will happen to you," she whispered, pressing her palm to her belly. "Not tonight." Glass shattered in the kitchen. The thing, whatever it was inside. Rosa moved slowly, silent as dust. The bullet missed by mere centimeters, embedding itself in the cedar pillar behind her. For a moment, Ignacio looked, ashamed. Then he dropped the gun, turned, and ran. 3 nights later, the family's well was poisoned. Rat poison. The kind that kills slowly, painfully. He hadn't just tried to murder Rosa. He put his own child at risk. No one ever saw him again. Or so they believed. Then came the next Friday. Rosa had almost drifted off when the front door slammed open with such force the hinges groaned. She jolted upright in bed, hand on her swollen belly. But instead of fury, Ignacio's face was pale with panic. He glanced at the clock, 11:55 p.m. 5 minutes late. His hand shook as he pulled on his old hunting boots, but in his rush, he forgot one thing. The double-barrel shotgun tucked under the bed. The one he never left without. Rosa watched him vanish into the trees. She didn't know what to feel, fear, hatred, or relief. And then she laughed. The man who tried to poison her was now unarmed in the forest. She kissed her daughter's head, curled beneath the wool blanket, and let the moonlight lull her towards sleep. 12:30 a.m. A howl echoed across the farmland. Soft, distant. The neighbor's dogs, she whispered, brushing it away like a passing breeze. 12:45 a.m. Another one. Louder. Closer. She sat up, heartbeat quickening. Then came the third. 12:55 a.m. It wasn't a howl anymore. It was a scream, low and drawn out. The kind of sound that shook the ground beneath your feet, that crawled down your spine and stayed there. Then something slammed against the back door. Rosa didn't hesitate. She rolled from bed, reached beneath the floorboard, and pulled out Ignacio's forgotten shotgun. Her daughter stirred. She conned her with a soft hum in one trembling hand. "Nothing will happen to you," she whispered, pressing her palm to her belly. "Not tonight." Glass shattered in the kitchen. The thing, whatever it was inside. Rosa moved slowly, silent as dust. Decades passed. Her granddaughter, Camila, grew curious. She found the buried shotgun. She started asking questions. Rosa told her everything. And from that moment, Camila became the story's next guardian. She was 17 when the howls began again. Not from outside, from within. Her dreams became thick with fog and blood. Her nails cracked. Her skin ached. Her senses sharpened. And once, while half awake, she heard a voice whisper, "It's your turn." She left the village. But the curse didn't stay behind. Rosa died with her hand clutching a locket of rust-colored hair. Not hers. Camila was the only one who saw it. And now, she lives far from the forest. But once a month, when the moon turns full, she feels it move inside her. If you've ever felt it, the pull of something ancient in your blood, the weight of a memory that isn't yours, maybe it's already begun. Because monsters don't always live in the woods. Sometimes they live in you. Some stories don't leave scars. They carve out cavities. This is the story of a boy named Marcus. Marcus hadn't seen his father in almost a decade. Born on the humid southern edge of Savannah, Georgia, his earliest memories were stitched with the scent of magnolia trees and the distant echo of porch screen doors slamming shut in the summer heat. His mother was young, 16 when she had him. His father, Harold, was a grown man of 36. The age gap raised eyebrows. The relationship didn't last long. By Marcus's first birthday, his mother had walked away, taking him with her. Not because of bruises, not because of shouting, but because of something worse. Harold was emotionally hollow. A man who held his infant son like a stranger, who could stare into his child's eyes and never see a future, only obligation. Still, once or twice a year, a birthday card would arrive. Stiff handwriting, generic messages. Happy birthday, Marcus. Be good. That was Harold's idea of parenting. But when Marcus turned 12, a phone call changed everything. Harold invited him to visit for the summer. 2 weeks. Just the two of them, father and son. Marcus's mother hesitated, but eventually agreed. He remembered the bus ride, the stale scent of leather seats, the way the world outside blurred into green and gray as miles passed. He was nervous, but hopeful. A boy who wanted to know his father, to fill the empty spaces in his life with something real. He didn't know he was walking straight into something much darker. Harold's house sat on a quiet patch of rural Georgia, all flaking white paint and rusted porch railings. The kind of place that seemed paused in time, like it hadn't changed since 1974. Their first week together was awkward, but peaceful. Harold was distant, but not unkind. They sat on the porch in silence, sometimes talked about baseball or old pickup trucks. Nothing deep, nothing real, but it was something. One evening, a man arrived. His name was Lee. He pulled into the driveway in an old gray sedan that coughed as it came to a stop. Marcus watched from the living room window as Harold stepped out and greeted him with a grin. A real one, the first Marcus had seen. Lee was tall, with pale skin and a receding hairline slicked flat with cheap gel. He wore a crisp button-up shirt despite the sweltering heat and smelled faintly of spearmint and old cologne. But it was his smile Marcus remembered most. It was too perfect, too wide, like it had been rehearsed. "Marcus," Harold said, waving him over. "Come say hi to your godfather." The boy blinked. Godfather? It was the first he'd heard of it. But he walked outside, extended a shy hand. Lee took it, gripped it a second too long. "Good to meet you, son," he said. "You're taller than I expected." There was something in his voice. Calm, polite, but heavy, as if it carried a secret it wasn't ready to share. That night, after dinner, Lee leaned over and made Marcus an offer. "I've got a basement at my place," he said. "Bit of a mess. If you're up for it, I'll pay you $50 to help clean it out." Harold chuckled. Teach the boy the value of work, huh? Marcus nodded. $50 was more than he'd ever had at once. They made plans for the next afternoon. Lee picked him up around noon. The car smelled like stale coffee and old air freshener. The ride was quiet. Country roads rolled by in silence, lined with trees that grew too close, their branches forming a sort of tunnel around them. Lee's house sat deep in the woods. Isolated. Old. A 2-story structure with crooked shutters and a sagging porch. As they pulled in, Marcus felt it, that subtle shift in his gut. A twinge. Something primitive. His mother used to call it a whisper from God, but he ignored it. The house was silent inside. No TV. No radio. Just the low creak of floorboards beneath their feet. Lee led into a door in the hallway. The basement. "I'll leave you to it," he said with that same smooth smile. "It's a bit of a mess down there, but you look like a strong kid." Marcus nodded, gripped the wooden handrail. Then he stepped down. The stairs groaned under his weight. The air grew cooler, damp, like something was breathing just out of sight. The light was dim. A single bulb hung from a cord at the bottom, casting long shadows on the cement floor. Marcus took the last step and froze. There, standing in the center of the basement, was a mannequin, dressed in full white robes, pointed hood, crimson cross, a Ku Klux Klan uniform. The breath caught in his throat. His pulse began to thrum behind his eyes. He looked around. Confederate flags lined the walls like banners. Yellowed photographs hung from nails, black and white images of lynchings, burnings, twisted grins of men posing beneath hanging bodies. There were nooses strung from pipes. Rusted shackles nailed to boards. A sign leaned against the far wall. White power. The horror wasn't loud. It was quiet. Insidious. Like a whisper beneath the skin. Then, a voice behind him. "That room's off limits." Marcus spun. Lee stood halfway down the stairs, arms crossed. His smile was gone. "Don't tell your daddy," he said, voice low. "He knows. But it don't need to be remembered." Marcus didn't speak. He couldn't. He turned, walked up the stairs slowly, carefully, as if the walls might close in. When he reached the top, Lee was gone. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The images from the basement looped behind his eyes. The mannequin, the ropes, the flickering bulb that buzzed like a warning. He told Harold he was sick, that he wanted to go home early. Harold didn't ask why, didn't press. He just drove. They rode in silence, the same tunnel of trees closing behind them as they left, as if nature itself wanted to seal that house off from the world. Marcus never said a word about what he saw. Not then. Not for years. Marcus was 21 the next time he spoke to Harold. College had changed him, opened his mind, but the memory of that summer, of that basement, never faded. One day, during a call, he asked, "Why, Lee?" he said. "Why do you let him be part of our lives?" There was a pause. Then Harold said, simply, "Sometimes a man's got ghosts. Long as they don't haunt you, you let him be." But Marcus knew better. Ghosts don't stay buried. They just wait. Wait in basements. Wait in smiles. Now, Marcus is 36, and the fear has changed shape. He feels it in elevators, when a man smiles too quickly, at gas stations, when someone says, "You're not like the others," at job interviews, when politeness feels too polished. He doesn't hate all white people, but he fears the ones who remind him of Lee, the ones who are too calm, too polite, too still, like something inside them is asleep, waiting. And more than anything, he resents his father, not for what he did, but for what he didn't do, for the silence, for the shrug, for handing him over like it was harmless. But it wasn't harmless. It was a basement, and no child should ever be sent there.